Hola, comrades! Today's topic of interest, Bioshock. Ever since I started this series detailing what makes a work great in just one scene, with Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team, back when this series was called Anatomy of a Scene, I've tackled everything from Undertale to Twilight Princess, but now I turn my attention to what is generally considered one of the best scenes in gaming, the descent into Rapture. Released in that fertile year for gaming, 2007, Bioshock represented a major break from the mindless shooters that had come to dominate the market from the beginning of the decade on. One of the most unapologetically heady games made at the time. It was not afraid to deal with matters of ideology and philosophy. This wasn't a simple, good American defeats evil empire shooter. It was a sharp critique of the kind of laissez-faire, unregulated Randian ideology internet libertarians love to trumpet. But by no means was this game unenjoyable or overly academic. Rather, it relied on intricate details and impressive visuals and an intoxicating atmosphere to articulate to you, the player, the lucid nightmare that was the city of Rapture. Bioshock left such an impression on players, not only because it is a well-told, evocative story, but because it was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Here you are, a gamer in 2007, going from one mediocre first-person shooter to the next, when suddenly you stumble upon this diesel-punkish sci-fi horror game. In a crowded marketplace, it stands out as unique, and it hooks you from the opening sequence. After the title screen, you find yourself underwater. This is where the first-person perspective of the game functions as a boon. You're instantly thrown into the action and left to wonder what's happened and what's going to happen next. You're scrambling, and that's something you're not used to doing at the start of games. The way it typically works is that you wait for the game to tell you what to do, fill you in on the backstory of the world, and slowly introduce you to that world. Now, there's nothing wrong with that type of storytelling, and in fact a lot of my favorite games ever made have slow starts, but for a game like Bioshock, that's so much about an unsettling, visceral experience, you need a more immediate hook. That first moment in the water says so much about the claustrophobic, uncomfortable experience you're about to partake in. You pop out of the water and take deep, frigid breaths. All around you is flaming rubble. You're ostensibly in the middle of nowhere, and your anguished cries relate that you're not in good shape. Then you see it, a tower rising out of the sea, the full moon behind it, cloaked in an eerie, inauspicious aureole. You swim toward the tower. Reaching it, you climb a staircase and throw open some ornate doors decorated with classical art. You enter a dark room. Turning on your flashlight, you're greeted by one of the iconic images of the game. A huge, glaring statue of Rapture founder Andrew Ryan, with an attached banner that says, "No gods or kings, only man." This is the kind of platitude Ayn Rand was fond of. Admittedly, it is a good phrase, and if more libertarians used language like this instead of being pedantic and cynical, I'd probably have a higher opinion of them. But like much of what Rand liked to preach, it's shallow and empty if you have any knowledge of the intricacies of society, or even human psychology. Even if you're not religious, if you at least gave people's psyches a passing concern, you'd understand that religion exists for a reason. And kings didn't just magically pop out of thin air and start ruling. Read a history book. There's a complex set of reasons why people have gravitated towards kings and emperors over the centuries. Even if you don't support the idea of kings or gods, the idea that a utopia would suddenly spring forth from Atlas shrugging off government is childless lunacy. Without a commitment to equality and policies that enforce that commitment, a small group of oligarchs will come to dominate society. And unlike what the Randians like to think, these won't be the smartest or the hardest working. They will be the most conniving, the most cutthroat, the most capable of taking advantage of the populace's most banal psychological urges to oppress them with grandiose hypercapitalism. Wow, that got too political too quick. But there's nothing wrong with being political. Contrary to what society as a whole, and especially online society, want you to think, politics is everywhere. As the great Greek statesman Pericles said, just because you do not take an interest in politics does not mean politics won't take an interest in you. I appreciate Bioshock's willingness to tackle political topics with tact and intelligence. But back to the line about gods and kings and men. This is the city of Rapture in a phrase. After exploring further, you come to a sort of machine, and after you pull a lever, you begin the descent itself. This is a good time to talk about the sound effects in this game in particular, and in this series in general, which are excellent. They're invasive and insidious, creeping into your skin, combined with the phantasmal string-based soundtrack. It permeates even the most innocuous scenes with the feeling that something is about to go very wrong very quickly. As you descend, a short film plays, narrated by Andrew Ryan, in which he declares more fully his reasons for founding Rapture, beginning with the phrase, "Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow?" What he's basically saying, if you catch the subtext, is that the upstanding upper middle class and rich are demonized by society and have to give their money up to the undeserving lower class, an absurd statement if you studied how the rich have exploited the poor and their privileges, and when the so-called great men have been given free rein, society has suffered, such as in the Gilded Age. I do have to give Ryan points, though. He knows how to present. When he finally drops the name of his city, Rapture is revealed in all its spooky, glorious, ostentatious outrageousness. Bioshock aims higher than to just verbally poke holes in Rand's ideology. It wants you to experience that ideology in all its flaws and its horrors, but also its facade of beauty and truth and logic and it fueling adrenaline. I'm just going to let you examine this city for a little while. Crazy, huh? There's nothing like it. Rapture is the perfect name for it. You're not supposed to like the city per se. This isn't the kind of fictional city where you stand up and go, "Ooh, I'd love to live there." But on the other hand, it's far from a disgusting ruin. It's modern and exciting and wondrous. Rapture is the perfect word. You can't take your eyes off it. You feel guilty for enjoying this city so much because it's so obviously morally wrong, even from a visual standpoint. It's a modern noir, Art Deco-inspired city that's underwater, with ominous octopi floating by. But you can't help but enjoy it. That's the beauty of Rapture. This game is not just about an underwater city, or Ayn Rand, or the way badly conceived ideas can backfire in ways their creators couldn't have possibly comprehended. It's about human greed and ambition, and how a so-called embrace of limitlessness can not only lead to hedonism, but also to stricter, more pressing limits than could have been imagined before. The line between dreams and nightmares is thin, and those who refuse to accept that, who push ahead heedlessly without concern for consequence, will quickly find themselves on the wrong end of that line. I did not expect this to get so political. That's not something I'm used to when talking about video games. Most gaming companies shy away from political topics. They don't want to offend anyone so that the most people possible will buy their game. So it's exciting to see games that offer a meaty, rich, thoughtful, provocative story. It's always a relief to see artists pushing against the accepted boundaries. What it means to me is that I'm not alone, that other artists see how limited mainstream fare is and want to go beyond that. It's even more of a relief when these groundbreaking works become the new mainstream. The influence Bioshock had on gaming is immense. I sincerely hope other works will follow its lead in offering thoughtful, evocative storytelling and moving the industry forward. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce more rapturous content. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that beautiful stuff. Adios, Comrade!